It is amazing to be back in Prague after 6 years when I was here at mdevcamp, and a lot of things have changed in 6 years. I was an Android user, now I'm an iOS user. iMessage just way too big in America for me to get away from it during the pandemic. I grew my hair really long, about a foot or so, and then donated it to charity, and now I'm back in Prague, and it all feels good. A lot of things have changed in the world since I started mobile development nearly 13 years ago. When I got my very first job doing mobile development, I sat down and did all the proof of concepts because I was the only developer that was going to be writing our iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac applications at the company. So I started prototyping with everything. You know, native language, booting up Eclipse at the time, booting up Xcode at the time, looking at multiple cross-platform technologies that were out there. But for me, I was a .NET developer, and I've been building Windows applications, and I was trying to find something that would take me to the next level to actually build that. And at the time, there was new technologies from the open source community to build iOS and Android apps. And now, since then, I've gone on to build tens of applications, shipping across all of the different platforms. And I've built powerful backends and front ends and cloud services. And I've done it all specifically with .NET. And our hope in did our slides? Let me see if my slides work. Ooh. There we go. And I did it all with .NET, and I figured out how to use PowerPoint. Because with .NET, I was able to go from start to finish, building out my mobile apps, my iOS apps, my Android apps, take advantage of powerful APIs, and use powerful productivity tools no matter where I was coding, whether it was on my Mac or my PC here, or if I wanted to even boot up a Linux machine. Now with .NET, you can not only just build mobile and desktop apps and web apps, you can infuse them with powerful AI services, powerful cloud services, deploy them to little tiny IoT devices, and build powerful games. So as a developer, we're often building mobile applications. You're at a mobile conference, but we know that there's more to mobile applications than just the app that's on the phone. There's powerful services. And for me, as a developer, picking one set of technology is what I wanted to do, and what I've been doing for the last 13 years. Now with .NET, there's a vast array of what we can offer to developers to build. Whether you want full reach and breadth to build one thing and deploy it everywhere, or you need real depth inside of your applications to tap into the different native APIs and user interfaces. I'm going to talk about all of them today. Our web stack with Blazor, our native stack with .NET MAUI, our multi-platform app UI, and in between with Blazor Hybrid. We realize that there's not just one type of developer out there. There's many types of developers. And we want to build an ecosystem that you're able to build the app that you want for your customers, your clients, internally, externally, or anywhere in between. I'm going to start with .NET MAUI, which is our multi-platform app UI. And it gives you a single code base to develop across iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows using underlying technologies on those platforms. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Built into the box are the things that you would expect. Tons of UI controls and layouts and views. Has multi-window support, so if you're on an iPad or if you're on a desktop, you're good to go. There's access to common platform APIs, but you have access to the underlying APIs, all in C#. And accessibility and productivity have been the forefront when the team was building .NET MAUI. And how it works is sort of like any other cross-platform framework that's out there. We enable you to build out a huge amount of shared code. Your UI, your resources, your platform features, your business logic, the things are the same across each platform. Now, .NET MAUI, when compiled up and running on the different operating systems, builds a native package. And what that means is that you can deliver that to any store you want. But you have these little C# bubbles up top, which means you can access the platforms and the APIs on each OS inside of C#. So if you don't want to write Swift or Kotlin or anything like that, you don't have to. What's great about .NET MAUI is it was re-architected from the ground up. Its predecessor, Xamarin Forms, had a long lineage in the cross-platform environment. But .NET MAUI simplified this development by giving developers a single project to use in Visual Studio or VS Code on any operating system. And then it gives you access to the native APIs and takes care of things specifically like app icons, fonts, splash screens, raw assets, anything, fonts in between, styles, and you put them all inside of a single project and deploy. What I'm going to do is pop back and forth, and we're going to take a look at that first. Now I'm over here on my Windows machine, and I'm just going to open up Visual Studio, and I just did a File, New Project over here. This is my theme, my bubblegum theme, which is my favorite here. And Visual Studio, it's available on Windows, but I'm also going to show you VS Code, so if you're a Mac user, you'll be good to go there too. Now the cool thing over here is that, like I mentioned, inside of an existing .NET MAUI project is a single project. And this gives you everything inside of it. So here, I have this platform folders, and that's where I can access native code. I have all of these resources. And if I actually open this up, we can take a look inside of images and our assets inside of here, for example, that we have app icons. We have images, which can be PNG, JPEGs, or SVGs, and splash screens. We all know that creating 1,000 different icons on Android isn't super fun. So figuring out how to do it on iOS, also not super fun. And Windows and Mac, also not super fun. So we just drop in SVGs, background, foreground. We take care of the rest. That's it. We just create it for you. Same thing with the splash screen. We'll just create your splash screen. You can override it if you want. You drop your fonts in there, your images in there. It'll resize everything automatically for you. Now you can create .NET MAUI UI in one of two ways. You can do it either in XAML like I have here, or fully in C#, kind of like a compose style. We have nice helpers there. In XAML, just a markup language, so we can see we have a scroll view. We can see that we have an image over here. We have labels, buttons, all that goodness. So I'm just going to run this on my Windows machine, and this will generate a native Windows application just using Windows UI over here. So I have my full application over here. We can actually see a live preview inside of Visual Studio. So I'm just going to fit the height here, and I can kind of take a look here, which is nice. I can come in, and this application, I can go ahead and click around and just, standard hello world. But if I go ahead and open up the code behind, we can see that I have a little bit of code. So I have a click counter event. It says count plus plus. And it just updates the text on the button. And then if someone's using a screen reader, it will tell them what the button count is. But I could come in and just change this to 10, for example. I'm just going to hit this little hot reload button. And what that will do is just refresh my UI. And as we can see, this is incrementing now automatically. So it's updating that logic and the code behind for me. I can do the same in XAML. So if I go here and say mdevcamp, we can actually see the live preview update in real time, just like you would expect. So things that kind of developers would expect. If you're brand new to XAML, you actually get this really cool kind of live visual tree over here. So you can see every single UI element inside your application. If your application UI grows a lot, you can just come in, tap on one, it brings you right to it. You can bring this a little bit bigger. You can actually just tap on the UI element. It'll bring you right to it. You also get these live property editors, so you can see every single property that's hidden from you automatically. So this hidden and non-hidden is automatically here. Margins, parents, scales, shadows, all these different properties are automatically handled for you. So super simple. I now could go over, and I'm just going to come up into this dialog box, and this enables me to switch where I want to go. So I want to go on my Windows machine, to Android emulators, to iOS devices, anything in between. So let me just go ahead and pick Android. I just have an Android emulator here. So any Android device that you plug in, it'll just pick up via ADB. Any Android emulator, no matter what they are, will pick it up automatically. And now it's actually compiling up a native Android package, so APK or Android app bundle, whatever you want. And it's going to start an entire debug process here, which is pretty cool, and just deploy it automatically onto my device. So this goes through the same compilation steps that you would expect from a normal project, except for it's .NET. So it's taking all of my different my different files here that are C# and .NET, and it's bringing them here and compiling it up. It's also going into these platform folders like I talked about. And we have Android manifests, we have main applications and main activity. And if I actually tap on one of those, the startup code is pretty minimal. We have these little these little attributes that's specifying my splash screen, that it's my main launcher, my configuration changes. And this activity has very little code in it because it's just inheriting from this app.compat activity. So it uses all the Android X resources under the hood for me, which is super nice. So it's detected my emulator, which is good. And we can see that it's gone in here and it's created my APK for debugging. And it should start it up. There we go. There's my splash screen. So it's not a very fancy splash screen out of the box, but you're going to create your own. So there we go. So again, I can come in, click around, which is great. I get the same exact view inside of this as well, which is super nice. So I can tap around. Of course, out of the box, everything is going to work exactly like you would expect if you do some dark theming as well. So just super nice. That's my application, totally running. Now, of course, if I wanted to do iOS development, I would normally have my Mac machine with me. But since I'm on holiday, I decided not to bring all of my machines out here. So what I'm going to do is I have my iPhone here. I'm just going to plug that into my Windows machine over here, my one single tiny little USB port. All right. And let's see if this will connect. There we go. Cool. So I'm going to go up to this drop down. I'm going to select iOS. And here under local devices, it's found my work phone. So there's 2 ways to do iOS development, 3 ways. Just do it on a Mac. That's easy. It just finds your iOS simulators or local devices. I can also connect to a Mac over the internet or local machine. Or I can use this iOS local deployment, which is going to go out, and it's actually going to just deploy the application directly onto my iOS device inside of a debug bundle for me, which is kind of magic in general. This will automatically handle all the provisioning profiles. It handles all the signing, everything that you need. And if I just launch it here, it'll start an entire debug process. So I can see it on my phone here, and it's loading it up. It just has a splash screen. And if we go into the iOS folder, same thing. We got app delegates, beautiful. All right, and it's going to start our hot reload, which gives us our live preview. And sure enough, there's my iOS application. Now, one thing that you probably noticed between is that the theming was pretty similar between iOS, Android, and my Windows applications. And that's because the team has actually given the default buttons, the actual same appearance. If you got rid of all of them, they would just be text, no border, no boundary. But you got to notice that it's using a UI navigation view, a navigation controller up top, so my text is in the middle compared to a standard application bar on Android and on Windows as well. But as a developer, I'm super productive, right? I'm all in one place, developing my applications, and I'm totally good to go, which is pretty awesome. And it handled all of the configuration, everything inside of it for me automatically. Cool. So that's just kind of a walk around of just building and deploying applications with .NET MAUI. But like I said, there's a lot more. So out of the box, these applications are native, right? So when I was bundling them up, they were using Android widgets and UIKit and Mac Catalyst, if I had my Mac out here, or WinUI 3, to actually display that native UI. We do have an entire 2D drawing library and 3D drawing library from the community. So if you want custom-built controls that are drawn onto the screen, you can do that as well. Now, as developers, though, we also have access to those other APIs that you want to integrate into your app. So Android X libraries, the core Android libraries, all the kits, all the cores, all the things, and Windows, the Windows App SDK, and more. Now, what's cool, though, is I said it's natively compiled. So each of these are either just-in-time compiled or ahead-of-time compiled. And they've been optimized for each platform, which means we get our native machine code that's being bundled up into a binary and then deployed out into an Android app bundle, into an IPA, however you want to deploy it to your store, internally, externally. And it just runs natively. So to actually, the operating system, it has no idea, it's just an app, right? We can access those APIs. The more powerful part is accessing those APIs that I keep talking about. So inside of iOS, Mac, Windows, Android, all of them have these native APIs, which are these bubbles up top. What the the teams do inside of Microsoft is we create C# bindings, kind of like P invoking into those APIs. So normally with some of these cross-platform frameworks, you need to go write Swift code or Objective-C code or Kotlin code to access things in the box. But with .NET MAUI and with C# and .NET, they're all available to you inside of C#. With C# features like events, lambdas, async await support, all those things. And we've been doing this for over 15 years. So if a new API comes out, you have access to it alongside all of the different .NET APIs. And the same thing for Android. So all those APIs are right there, totally ready to go, which is great. Now, beyond that, though, there's many APIs that are similar. So what the team did beyond that, like they've simplified fonts and images and all these things. They said, hey, what if we created some common APIs and just wrote that code for developers, right? Like, no one really wants to go and mess around with Android code to check if you have internet connectivity. Maybe there's a helper library out there now. But if I was to go to like Google or let's see, github.com/.net/MAUI, right, totally open source. I go here and I bop around and I go get the source. We have this essentials, which are cross-platform APIs, and I can look at all of them. So battery, opening a browser, clipboard, compass, connectivity, contacts, email, all the stuff that you would normally do. Let me just open up connectivity, and I could look at Android, right? So if you've written Android, code, this is going to look super duper familiar, right? So there's just tons of code, and we have listeners, and we're looking for different permissions, and there's like 1,000 different versions of Android, so we're like handling all the connectivity managers. But these are just the Android APIs inside of .NET. So we have all these different broadcast receivers set up, and we're totally ignoring compatibility for some of these, which is great. And there's like certain things that happen on only one operating because it's Android. So we handle all this for you. Like this is like I wrote this code, so it's like just ridiculous. So what we did is we said, let's go back into that project and try to simplify that as well. So let's say we went into that main page, and instead of clicking around, we just said, let's see, var network, and we'll say connectivity dot connection profiles dot, I don't know, let's say dot first or default. So let's grab the first one from the list. Now let's say var has internet equals connectivity dot is current dot is network access, and we can see if it has internet, constrained, local, to see if it has internet, cool. And then I'll just go ahead and pop up a dialog box. There we go, Copilot will just write my code, cool. So just go out and automatically do this. So let me just go ahead and let's do it on my Windows machine here, and let me just go ahead and debug it here. So we'll go ahead and pop this open, and I can go ahead and add like a breakpoint here, and we'll see what happens. So like that's much nicer than actually having to write any of that code or use some other third-party library. It's built into the box. And I'm using just like static methods here, but they're also interfaces, so you could grab those too. There we go, has internet, true, network, probably would be Wi-Fi, that makes sense. And then we have a little dialog box, and it says, yeah, I have Wi-Fi, internet, cool. Let's go ahead and put this into airplane mode, and now my mouse is going to stop working. So I hit it again, and now internet is false, and network is Ethernet apparently, somehow. Some Ethernet something is hooked up. But anyways, that's what the Windows machine is telling me, so whatever it told me is what I'm returning. We're totally good to go. And then if I come back down over here, I'm going to turn off Wi-Fi mode, so I can use my mouse again. Perfect. Click it again. Continue again. And sure enough, I have internet again. Perfect. And the same exact logic and the same code will work if I go ahead and put this onto Android, right? So I could come in, and I could go off and compile this up. And then this will call the underlying platform code. So it's not doing anything magical besides abstracting away all that code for you. And the same thing would work on iOS, obviously, which is super nice. There we go. So it's going to compile it up again and then deploy it onto my emulator. So let's go ahead and get that up and running. And every time I compile, the compilation time sort of varies. It kind of depends on how much it thinks has changed inside the source code. So sometimes fast, sometimes not fast. So we'll see. And while that's compiling, the other thing I want to kind of show here is that on each of these platforms, you have access to those APIs. So for some reason, you like this code but didn't love this code and wanted your own version of the code, if we go up to the top here, we can see that this is just using a bunch of Android APIs. So this Android app, content, net, it's using those all automatically for me. So I can come into the main activity and to add another file in here and just add that code there. And the same thing's true on iOS. So if I came into here and I looked at the iOS code here, we have all the reachability code all written here that you can just grab automatically. Okay, so it's compiled up. I found my emulator and it should be deploying. And we'll see it up and running. There we go. Cool. All right, so if I click me, sure enough, now it says it's grabbing cellular, but there's probably multiple internets, so it's returning probably Wi-Fi and cellular, but the link query there is just doing the first one for me, which is really cool. All right, so all that super simplified, abstracted out automatically. But this talk was not only about what .NET MAUI can do natively for developers, but also what we're doing for the hybrid space. Because we realize that while there are many, many mobile engineers in the world, there's also many, many web devs in the world, and many web devs also need to build mobile applications. Or if you're a mobile app developer, you have web teams that want to integrate work into their application. So .NET itself powers some of the most powerful applications in the world everywhere, at Microsoft, outside of Microsoft. Our APIs are blazingly fast. Every time you boot up Copilot or Bing Chat or Outlook or Teams, all powered by .NET on the back end. On the front end, obviously at Microsoft, we use a vast array of different technologies for our web tech and our mobile tech and our desktop tech. But on the .NET team ourselves, we have a core set of technology called ASP.NET Core and a full stack web framework called Blazor. And Blazor is sort of our next generation full stack web app to build applications on the server or directly in the web browser or in between. So you can run them over here, like you see on the left-hand side, in a browser, deploy it to a cloud. You have full power of running your application logic up there. On the right-hand side, you are able to run your .NET applications with Blazor directly in the browser, powered by WebAssembly. And the great part here is that when you're building applications with Blazor, you don't have to write a line of JavaScript. Everything you do is inside of C#. So what that means is that if I open up another project here, I have this Blazor app right here, and everything is component-based. So here I have some components, such as these pages. Over here I have a home page, a weather page, a counter page. If I open this counter page up, for example, we can see that I just have some standard HTML. I can use all sorts of different components that are out there. If I wanted to use material design or I want to use Fluent UI, things like that, they're all available. But we can see this code block. So here, this Blazor application, if I just run it, is just going to be a web app that's running locally on my machine. I have the option to run this on the server or directly in the browser based on how I want to deploy my application. So it should boot up here. Let's see. There we go. So there's a Blazor application here. I have a counter. I can say click me. I get a little breakpoint, and I can run and debug that. I get a little weather forecast coming in, hitting an API automatically for me. So all of this is in C#, 100%, making web requests, displaying data, and then you can just use standard web. If you want to speak to JavaScript, you totally can, but we have this basically end-to-end full-stack web development. Now, what's cool about it is that not only can you use .NET inside of JavaScript and see all of your C#, you can take advantage of the entire ecosystem of .NET. So we have obviously hundreds of thousands of libraries built by Microsoft and the community to do anything that you want to do, whether it's deserializing JSON to full frameworks that are out there to enable those scenarios. So Blazor itself is great for the web. .NET MAUI is great for mobile and desktop. And what the team said was, wouldn't it be great if we could somehow combine these two pieces of technologies? So we did, and we call it Blazor Hybrid. Blazor Hybrid is an extension of Blazor that works in multiple .NET UI frameworks. So it works in .NET MAUI. It actually even works in WPF and WinForms, which are Windows frameworks. So what it means is with Blazor Hybrid, you can mix and match as much or little of native UI or web UI into a single application and deploy it the same because it's built on .NET MAUI. So all the things I showed you continue to work. So if you have web developers, they can reuse their existing web skills. You have access to the native APIs. You can mix and match. You can seamlessly ship to the App Store because it's just a .NET MAUI app leveraging a web view inside of your app to display your UI. So what this means is it kind of is this big extension. So we not only have all of our shared business logic between our mobile and desktop apps, but also our web apps as well, and we can deploy them anywhere. So let's take a look at that really quick here. So what I have is this Blazor app, and I also have this little Razor class library. So basically, you can think of this little view over here, this Razor component, as basically a shareable view between my applications. So if I open it up, it's just going to look like a little div, and it's like this component is defined over here, and I have some JS interop, some background images, and just some little things in here. I have a little CSS, so scary CSS. And if I run this application again, we can see that this automatically is displaying this little view here, so inside the web app. And I could bring that between all my applications. I could bundle it up and share this beautiful joy of a UI with all of you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a MAUI application. That's a MAUI Blazor app. So I'm going to say add new project. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and add a .NET MAUI Blazor Hybrid app. So if I go to Blazor Hybrid in the view, here it is, which is cool. We'll just add it into here and create it. Awesome. Now, this application is going to look very, very familiar to what we just saw earlier. We have all of our platform code, all of our resources code, and we also have these Blazor components in this application. So I could take these, I could put them in my shared code, I could start sharing them between my Blazor app and my .NET MAUI application as well. So that means I still have this main page, that's my startup. The difference is instead of using our native labels and buttons, I'm using a Blazor web view. And a Blazor web view is using the standard web controls on the different platforms to display. And this is looking specifically for the app selector and this component that's hosted in this index HTML. And it's going to boot up these routes. So it's actually the exact same code. There's a little router here. It'll automatically figure out all of my different pages that I need. So here's /weather, for example, and it'll boot these all up for me. So if I take this and I set this as my startup project, and I just run it, it's going to compile up a native Windows application. But inside of it, I have a WebView 2 running here on Windows that will display basically everything you saw in the Blazor application, but inside of this application, which is super cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at it here as it builds up. All right. Cool. Cool. So here we go. So it just loads it up. We have our page, and if I go ahead and collapse it down, I just get a different view, just CSS, right? Just magic of CSS. So everything just sort of works inside of here, which is super cool. And I get the live preview going on here too. If I wanted to use that component, for example, I'm just going to take this Razor class library. I'm going to drag and drop it over here. That adds a reference to it automatically. And then I'm going to go into the, let's say, home component over here. And I'm going to say Razor class library, component 1. The IntelliSense finds it. I'm just going to boot it up again. There we go. And now it's going to basically take that reference from the Razor class library and bring it directly into my, my application over here. We should be good to go. Cool. Awesome. There we go. So there we go. Cool. We get pages, counters. There's our view. If I want to, I can mix and match UI. So if I wanted to come in here. I could turn this into a tabbed page, for example. I'm just going to make this a content page. I'm going to say title equals Blazor. I'm just going to wrap this here. There we go. Cool. Let's remove this background color. Awesome. There we go. And then I'm just going to add another content page. I'm going to put a vertical stack layout. And then I'm just going to add a label that says text, hello, mdevcamp. And then let's put let's put a button in here, text, click me. There we go. Perfect. And then I'm going to say title .NET MAUI. Cool. And the only thing I need to change in the code behind is that this is a tabbed page. There we go. So tab pages, all that stuff's built right in automatically. So this here will boot up. There we go. Cool. And now we're using these sort of standard native tabs over here on the Windows view. It doesn't look very pretty. It doesn't do anything. But you can see now I'm navigating between these two different views. So I could actually take each of those pages, I could put them in different tabs, and I could create a native experience just like I could over on iOS and Android as well, which is cool. So if I came over here and I was to pop this over onto Android, let's go ahead and run this. Now again, this is still going to bundle up the same exact Android application, right? The APK inside of there. But we're going to just be using a standard Android web view to display and render that web content coming from the MAUI application inside of here. So let's give that a few seconds to boot up, hopefully. There we go. And again, this will just go through standard compilation. So based on, again, machine time, size, limit, all the things, we'll kind of see what happens here inside of here. And it should work. But as that's compiling, I think the important part to kind of point out is that while today all of these layouts and pages are here, I could easily bring that into my Razor class library and start sharing a lot of code. And I still, of course, have access, if I was to go into any of these pages or in the code behind, I still have access to all of those APIs, like I showed you earlier, such as connectivity, all the device sensors, geolocation, everything like that, which is great. OK, cool. It's found the emulator. It should sign it, and we should be good to go. As it deploys, you got this, Visual Studio. Perfect. Cool. Awesome. So I just have tabs on the top up here. You can put the tabs on the bottom, anything that you'd like. I don't know why that's being a little bit funky, but probably an image not embedded in there. But you get the idea, right? And you get the tabs. You get everything you want all over the place, based if you want native controls or back and forth. And you can go in and you can mix and match. So half of your screen or part of your screen can be web content, and the other half of it can be in native content as well. But let me go ahead and actually open this in VS Code over here as sort of the last thing, because I wanted to show that off. Trust myself, super cool. Let me delete. I have a bunch of files in here, cool. So I have a bunch of stuff in here, which is great, including this solution. So there are these solution files over here. So I have my MAUI app. And if you've ever used VS Code on any machine, you kind of just have a normal file browser, right? So here's just the normal XAML that's inside of here. Here's the code behind, which is great. But we have these extensions for VS Code to give you a better experience, more similar to Visual Studio for doing C# and .NET development. So I have a .NET MAUI extension, I have a C# extension, and the C# dev kit. So if I actually go back into the Explorer and I drop this down, we can actually see up here, we have this Solution Explorer. So funnily enough, there's actually a bunch of projects. I just deleted one in here. I have a bunch of things, but they're not in my solution that I'm normal. They're just on disk. But if I look here, I still have my MAUI program. I can look at my XAML page inside of here. And if I want to deploy it, I just have standard commands. I can say .NET, and I have new project, open project. I can pick an Android device inside of here. I can do startup project. So if I have multiple apps, I can select one there. Down over here, I can select which project I want to pick up, what I want to debug on, and then I can just go in and hit run and debug. So let me just do Windows here, pick startup device, and I'm just going to do it on my local machine. Hit run and debug. And again, this would go ahead and automatically compile up my Android app, my Windows application, or if I'm on a Mac, obviously my Mac applications and my iOS applications. And if I'm on a Linux machine, you can use VS Code to do Android development with .NET MAUI as well. So this is great. So it should be building up and deploying. Cool. Took 15 seconds. Rad. There we go. So now you just have your normal VS Code experience out of the box. So no matter where you want to develop, you're totally good to go. And now we have that Blazor hybrid application running right here, as I would expect to do, right? I can stop debugging. I can have all my favorite extensions all installed. I can have my backends, my front ends, everything inside of here. Awesome. So that's a whirlwind tour because, honestly, our world of .NET is much, much larger than all that. But from a web, client, and hybrid scenario, we give you that full choice, that full breadth. Whether you want full reach and you just want to go all web 100%, you're going to go full depth and go deep into native client development, or you want to bring them in between. Mix as much or as little as you want based on what you need for your clients, for your company, or whatever you're building. And then take advantage of the entire .NET ecosystem to build out backends, other front ends, services, and deploy them anywhere. .NET MAUI is complete and free, open source. You can check it out at .NET/MAUI. And of course, Visual Studio and VS Code can all be found on visualstudio.com. So with that, thanks everyone so much for coming to learn about multi-platform with .NET. And I'll take a few questions. Thanks.
James Montemagno. James, shall we take it from the top?
Sure.
How is performance compared to native iOS, Android, Swift, Kotlin, React Native, Flutter, and Kotlin native multi-platform?
Great question. I mean, every single different platform out there is going to have different implications, obviously, compared to going down the native, just native stack. The team have come a long ways, I would say, since the early days. They've been doing it for decades now at this point. So I'd say pretty good. I've been using it for 13 years. It really depends on building your application, what you're doing. I really like the Flutter stack of how they do it and hand draw their UIs, which is really nice. But of course, it's going to vary on base what you need, for example, in your applications there. So I don't have like a comparison one-to-one, but if you go to the .NET blog and just go to the .NET MAUI dropdown, our engineers every year write huge performance blogs comparing different frameworks, different scenarios. Because when you say performance, what do you mean? Is that the startup time? Is that a scroll? You know, your users are obviously doing this all the time in your app. You know, what does it mean in general? So I think that that's something to think about in general. But our startup time, super fast. It's ahead of time compiled. And I think the performance is good to great. I'm not going to say it's like as good as native.
Good to great is awesome.
Yeah.
Good to great.
There you go.
OK, let's take another one. Are there any famous apps written in MAUI?
Yeah, great question. It's kind of a loaded question because .NET MAUI is the successor to Xamarin and Xamarin Forms. So applications like that have been written for decades at this point, and many of those applications came over into .NET MAUI. Internally at Microsoft, our Dynamics team uses it a lot. Our Seeing AI application, which if you download on iOS is an amazing application with .NET MAUI that's out there. We have huge companies like Fidelity, for example, building with .NET MAUI. We see a lot of work internally, I would say, so things that I'm not allowed to talk about. But let's just say if you're in the Netherlands, an application that's installed on every single device in the entire nation might be written with MAUI, so that's a good one that's out there, yeah.
Let's take a couple more. What do users say to UX? Can you recognize differences compared to native applications like navigation animations or ripple effects? Is it better than Flutter?
Good question. Flutter does it different. It depends. Like we use the native controls, right? So if you want just the native styling with ripple controls, you want access to that, you can have all that. There's amazing control vendors building things. It depends. How good are you at building UIs? I'm like, okay. So mine look okay. I'm really famous for making applications that put one number on a screen and do a bunch of stuff. Like I have a cycling app called My Cadence that just connects to Bluetooth devices and things like that. So how good did that need to be? I don't know. It's a number on a screen, but very important because it's a very important number. But no, I think that you can accomplish sort of anything that's out there. I'd say the Flutter animation system, I think, is a little bit better than ours right now. Yeah.
Okay.
I like to be honest, right? I have no sense of lying. Yeah.
How about IDE for macOS?
Visual Studio Code is not a full IDE, but that's our offering on Linux and Mac. Yeah.
Cool. What is the advantage? What are the advantages of MAUI if we are already using Flutter in our company?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I really go talk to developers. I would say, well, if you're using a lot of .NET and C# at your company or F#, coming in and reusing different libraries, different knowledge, and building a .NET MAUI application obviously is a real advantage because you'd have to rewrite all of that in Dart or in Swift or in Kotlin that's out there. If you're just going in and you're only building just a Flutter app and you don't have to worry about backends or websites or anything, then lucky for you, I would say. I get to do that sometimes personally. But like if you're at your company and you're building large scale, you're building backends, front ends, all these stuff, having a unified stack, a unified set of technology, I think is the advantage. So.
All right. Is there a way to make different styles of components for different platforms? Yeah. Design systems between iOS and Android and Windows are pretty different.
Yeah, great question. So inside of this application was a bunch of default themes, kind of like if you were to install like Tailwind or Bootstrap, right? You just kind of get a default theme. You could delete that and you would just get standard iOS, Android, and Mac like theming. It would be one-to-one as if you put down a UI button, for example. But inside of our code, you can conditionally compile, or you can say on iOS do this, on Android do this, so you have real tight flexibility between each platform to stylize it as you want. Yeah.
All right. How about Xamarin? Xamarin Form, is it dead?
Yeah, great question. So .NET MAUI is the successor to it. So we enable developers to migrate their applications easily from Xamarin to Xamarin Forms over. We have a tool that you kind of right-click upgrade. It's technically still in support for another 8 days. So developers using Xamarin Forms have 8 days to upgrade. Now, I still haven't migrated all mine, so I don't know. Until iOS and basically until Xcode requirements of requiring Xcode 16, which next year sometime would be good to go. But
okay,
yeah.
Let's take the last question. What about Linux support? Compile app with single code base running in Mono developer tools.
Wow, great question. This is a great question we get all the time. So the powerful part of .NET is while .NET MAUI itself doesn't support Linux today, we do have our engineer, Javier, working on an open source implementation of it that you can try out, which is really cool. I think it uses GTK on it. There's a vast ecosystem around .NET. So for example, there's other frameworks that build on top of what we do for iOS, Android, and Mac, like Uno or Avalonia, that have been around for a long time. So if .NET MAUI is not great for what we offer in the box, there's a lot of additional frameworks in the .NET ecosystem that you can take advantage of. So if you need a Linux app, you can build it with .NET. Just not with .NET MAUI, but you can do everything here with one of the other frameworks I talked about. So.
Thank you very much. That's all we have. James Montemagno, thank you.
Appreciate it.